Since the Supreme Court overturned the constitutional right to an abortion 6 months ago. Since then, 12 states have put in place total bans on the procedure. There are other states that have enacted restrictions. And Laura, I know you've been following this issue for many months now. So let's talk first about the states that had this as a ballot measure. It was there for people to vote on directly. Where you said people making a clear statement. Tell us about those.
There were 5 states where voters had abortion on the ballot. Those 5 states were Kentucky, Michigan, California, Vermont, and Montana. And across all 5 of them, voters ultimately supported protecting abortion access rather than restricting it. In 3 of those, California, Michigan, and Vermont, that enshrined abortion rights in those state constitution. The 2 outliers there were Kentucky and Montana. In Kentucky, voters defeated a measure that would have put in the state constitution no protection for abortion rights. In Montana, the measure there didn't directly say apply to abortion. It has to do with babies, quote, being born alive, and it would have made them a legal person, and doctors were not in favor of this because of the fact that they felt as though it would hurt the care for premature babies who ultimately may not survive. And that measure was ultimately defeated. That race was called today, that ballot measure was called today by the AP, and that came to 52.5% voting no, defeating that measure, 47.5% voting yes. So I was really tracking 3 states here. Democratic candidates in a lot of states really focused on abortion access and made it their rallying cry for voters against Republican candidates. The 3 states that I wanted to talk about were Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan was reelected, made this a key issue in her race. And then Tony Evers in Wisconsin was reelected, and he again also was very focused on abortion, particularly with the prospect of GOP, with a very strong GOP state legislature there. And then Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania, a new governor-elect there in Pennsylvania, and he very much was focused on reproductive rights. He opposed his Republican opponent, who was actually very much in favor of really severe restriction on abortion access there.
So if you step back, Laura, and you look at the issue, the races across the country, how big a factor was abortion in how these races turned out?
It ultimately appears to have been a really major factor, and that's what I was hearing when I was on the ground in Michigan from female voters there, as well as from some Pennsylvania voters that I was talking to. And we have a data point that really hammers this, which is that the AP survey of voters found that 24% of voters cited abortion as their top issue. And of those, 70% voted for the Democratic candidate, 27% for the Republican candidate. So a big difference there in ultimately people supporting abortion access, favoring Democrats. I spoke to Cornell Belcher, a veteran Democratic pollster today, who said that Democrats needed a dynamic event if they were going to defy history in a midterm election, and that ultimately the Supreme Court's decision on abortion gave them that dynamic event. It helped Democrats counter inflation, because a lot of voters who cited inflation as their top concern, they ended up breaking for Republicans.
And finally, quickly, we know President Biden made abortion rights a central part of his arguments in these elections. What is the White House looking at what it can do in coming months and the next few years?
So I asked White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre about this today. I asked her if they were going to still send a bill to Congress come January that would codify Roe v. Wade, and this is what she said.
We just have to see what the complexion of Congress is going to look like, and then we'll move forward from there.
Is there anything else that the president thinks he can do if there is only 1 seat in the Senate? Codifying Roe would be difficult.
He's going to do everything that he can. Let's not forget, people have said he wasn't going to get the bipartisan infrastructure legislation done. He got it done. People didn't think he was going to get the CHIPS and Science Act done. We got it done.
And I was asking there, pointing out that at best Democrats may have a 1-seat majority in the Senate, and ultimately Biden had really sent this final message to voters that if they gave him 2 more Democratic senators, that he could potentially overcome a filibuster and see Roe v. Wade codified. It doesn't look like Democrats are going to have that at all, but they said that they are going to look more at potential executive actions and other options that the administration can take.
Yeah, that does not look likely, but clearly abortion, a big